My sister planned my parents' anniversary party without inviting me because they didn't want a dysfunctional failure like me to ruin it, but giving my dad's mistress the address might do the trick. So, I, 24 female, recently exposed my dad's affair at my parents' 25th wedding anniversary party, simply because I wasn't invited. Right now my family hates me because they think I humiliated them out of spite. They're not entirely wrong, but I have my reasons. First, I wasn't invited because my sister, the golden child who hates me, planned everything. She's 22, has no degree or experience, yet my parents still invested in her to help her start her event planning business. From what I know, she's mostly been hired by her friends and some relatives for small events over the past year. So this was her first major event, and she hates me. She always has, so naturally, she didn't invite me. Then, when one of my cousins, who I'm close with, asked me what I was planning to wear to the party, I realized I hadn't received an invitation. When I confronted my parents about it, they said my sister sent out the invites, but even they admitted that it wasn't a good idea for me to be there. At first, they tried to beat around the bush and be polite about it, but they were basically saying that since I have anxiety issues, I didn't deserve to be at the party. Naturally, I got upset because it's not like I was going to ruin their party over that, although not being invited did lead to me doing just that. Then my mom got angry, always the first to defend my sister, and told me it wasn't their fault I was a dysfunctional idiot with so many mental health issues. She said that if I wanted to be at the party, maybe I should have been normal, but I wasn't, and they didn't want me embarrassing them in front of so many guests with my little problems. Then she hung up, and my dad didn't say a word in my defense. I didn't expect him to because that's just how he's always been in my family. My mom favors my sister over me, probably because they're so alike, and my dad is the kind of person who really has no backbone at home. Whatever my mom says is what goes, and if my mom thinks my sister deserves to be treated better than me, then that's what happens. Since I was a kid, I knew my mom favored my sister. Maybe my dad didn't want her to be so openly biased, but he never stood up to her, so he's not much different from the two of them. That's why I shouldn't have been surprised, but when he said nothing recently, it did bother me a bit. A couple of months ago, I accidentally found out he'd been cheating on my mom, and he knew it. So I thought that maybe because of that, at least he'd know he owed me something for keeping quiet about it. I was keeping a secret for his sake, so the least he could do was defend me and stand up for me. But not even then did he do that. I didn't tell my mom because she didn't exactly deserve my loyalty or anything like it, but that's changed in a way. Not that I owe my mom anything, but you get what I mean. So after that conversation, I decided to tell my mom everything once and for all. I asked my cousin for the address of the venue, sent it to my dad's mistress, and asked her to show up that day and expose my dad. It wasn't that hard to convince her. She was already pretty upset with him over the past few months because my dad didn't want to leave my mom. And that's why, on the day of the party, she ended up going and telling everyone the truth about my parents' marriage, that it was just a total sham, and that my dad had been having an on and off affair with her for the last 8 years. So that's basically what happened. I can provide more details if needed, but for now, I just need to know if I did the right thing or not. My family has been humiliated in front of everyone. My mom cursed out my dad pretty badly, threw a tantrum at the party, and had to be taken outside to calm down. After that, when she got home, she didn't let my dad in either, so he's been staying at a hotel. My dad obviously knows I'm the only one who could have set this up, so he told me he was very disappointed in the way I decided to handle the situation. He said I'd been extremely petty and basically proved my mom right, because I ended up humiliating the family just out of spite. He said I used someone else's emotions to hurt my family just to get back at them for personal reasons, which was a pretty low thing to do. Well, I told him I was disappointed in him too because he's never done anything for me and has let my mom treat me the way she has. I think I've been the villain in all of this. I'm not going to argue that. But at this point, I don't care too much. This family deserves to have all its dirty laundry aired out. Still, IT rules demand I ask if I'm the bad guy. Plus, I'd like to hear other opinions. Update 1. For those who asked for more details, here's some. First, the woman my dad has been having an affair with is the mom of one of my close friends from high school. That's how my dad met her. He used to attend my parent-teacher meetings because my mom didn't care to do anything for me. It was always about my sister for her. Anyway, that's how they started as friends, and then the affair began. My friend's dad had passed away when she was little, so at least her mom was single. A couple of months ago, I went to a restaurant a bit out of town for a date, and that's where I saw my dad with her. When I parked my car in the lot, I saw my dad's car there, and inside the two of them were kissing. They pulled apart when they saw me standing outside, but it was already too late. I'd seen everything. Obviously, I freaked out a bit at first, but then my friend's mom sat me down and explained everything. She basically told me they'd been seeing each other for the last 8 years and had planned to tell me after my dad told my mom, But since I'd already found out, it was better I knew the whole truth. She's the one who told me my dad didn't love my mom at all and couldn't even stand her. He had only married her because both families pressured them into it after she got pregnant with me while they were dating, which explains her hatred for me, or at least her indifference. Apparently, he had always regretted that decision and planned to divorce her after helping my sister set up her business and build a life away from the two of them. Originally, it was supposed to happen after my sister went off to college, but since that wasn't happening and she still lived with them, they decided to delay it a bit. Eventually, it had to be done. Since I already knew, they could only ask me to keep the secret for them. That's how I found out. They also told me that, apparently, after my sister's business started to take off a little, my dad would talk to my mom about the divorce. Once everything was finalized, the two of them would get married. It was clear that my friend's mom was very serious about my dad, as she was the one doing all the talking, but my dad barely said anything, not even a confirmation or a nod. I agreed to keep their secret, but I also said that if anyone asked me about it, I wouldn't deny anything. Thankfully, no one asked me anything at any point. No one had any idea what was going on. But then a couple of weeks ago, my friend's mom started contacting me to ask if my dad had said anything to my mom or if my dad was talking to me. So there I was, caught in the middle of an affair I didn't want to be a part of, which ultimately turned out to be quite useful. I'm not very close to my parents, so I genuinely had no idea what was going on and couldn't tell her anything. She ended up telling me that my dad had been ignoring her for the past few weeks, and she was very confused about what was happening. For the past 8 years, he had constantly been telling her that he would leave his wife after his youngest daughter left the nest. Right now, she knew for certain that my sister was working on her business. And it's not like she constantly needed her parents' guidance. She's in her 20s. She was trying to get my dad to talk to my mom and start the process, but he had started ignoring her, and she was confused. So she tried to talk to me about it because I was the only other person who knew. Unfortunately, I didn't know anything, but from that interaction, I deduced that she wasn't exactly happy with the situation with my dad. When I contacted her and told her about the anniversary party, by that time, she was already quite upset. So technically, yes, I did use that to get back at my parents. Yes, it was revenge, I won't deny it. I know revenge kills the soul and poisons it, but for now, my soul feels pretty good. But again, it's not like I forced her to do anything. I just gave her the idea, and she acted on it. So she was just as involved. Anyway, that's how the situation unfolded, and yes, that's all. Also, my friend doesn't know. Her mom asked me not to tell her because she thought it would be better if she found out from her, and I think it would be more appropriate for her to hear it from her mom. I think by now she must have told her, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, if she hasn't in a couple of days, I'll tell her myself. Update 2. Thanks to everyone who commented, whether good or bad. Before getting into the update, here are a couple of things in my defense. First, a lot of people had plenty to say about the fact that I hadn't told my mom about the affair and instead chose to help my dad cover it up. To that, I'd just like to say I wasn't covering for my dad. I was simply staying out of it. Also, my mom and I have never had a good relationship. She has never liked me, and because of that, even my sister doesn't like me. Hatred is always a learned behavior, and she learned to treat me poorly from my mom. Since I was a child, my sister could see that my mom never gave me any importance and always yelled at me for one reason or another. So, she thought she could treat me the same way. But of course, I wasn't going to tolerate things from my younger sister, so I would push back, and we'd end up fighting. That's how she started hating me, and my mom never seemed to care about that either. So why should I care about this woman? This woman who literally never cared about her firstborn daughter, and instead always treated me badly. I don't think I did anything wrong by keeping this secret from her. And even if I did something wrong, I barely care because I feel she deserved it. I don't care what anyone else thinks. This is karma, plain and simple. Now, regarding the situation at the party, I agree that I instigated it. My dad's girlfriend never would have found the address if I hadn't given it to her, so I played a huge role in it. But again, it's not entirely my fault. She wanted to go, she wanted to show up and create a scene, so she did. All I did was give her the means to do so. I didn't force her to go. And if we go back a little further, I didn't force my dad to have an affair either. If he was stuck in a marriage with my mom and didn't love her, I also didn't force him to ignore her and turn her against him. So yes, I agree that I had a major role in this, but I think it's really stupid to blame me for everything. Besides, they're the ones who always treated me poorly, so why should I feel bad for serving them a bit of karma? I've always tried to be a good daughter to both of them. I've always done my best to make sure I was someone my family could be proud of, and it's never been enough. I know it'll never be enough. They've never appreciated me, so I don't feel bad for anything I've done. Yes, it might have been humiliating for them, but I don't care. It was also very humiliating for me when they said I was a dysfunctional failure, especially considering the fact that I'm really not. I struggle with anxiety, I'm not good with crowds, and I get a little uncomfortable. But I don't think that's humiliating for anyone, the way they were making it out to be. As for the failure part, I don't know what they were talking about because as far as I know, I'm a normal and relatively successful person for my age. I have a stable job that I love, which also pays well. I'm not financially dependent on my parents at all, not that they'd help me if I were, and I'm completely independent. I think for my age, that's enough. Maybe I don't have a business like my sister, but I also don't have parents to support me if I start something of my own, so that's a pretty big difference. Now, as for what's happening now, I've only been talking to my cousin about what's going on in my family, since obviously, my parents aren't going to talk to me. She's my aunt's daughter. And of course, my aunt, being my dad's older sister, knows everything that's happening. By extension, my cousin knows everything too, as she's 21 and studying nearby, so she still lives at home. Anyway, she told me that last night my dad moved in with them temporarily because he couldn't stay at a hotel indefinitely and has no idea how much longer my mom is going to keep him out. So, for now, he's staying with them. Clearly, my mom is still very angry with him, and I don't blame her. She should be mad at him. If I were in her shoes, I'd probably be considering divorce right now, but I don't think that's on the table for them yet, at least not based on what my cousin has told me. Apparently, my dad is trying to reconcile with her, and my mom is just angry and resisting everything. But the topic of divorce hasn't come up yet, at least not from my mom. She just insults him every time they talk on the phone and vents her frustration at him. But I don't think she has any intention of leaving him. So, it's a pretty bad situation right now, and no one has any idea how it will end, least of all me. I really don't understand how, even after everything that's happened, my mom can even think about staying with him. But hey, that's her decision, not mine, so I have nothing to say about it. Also, I talked to my friend, and it turns out she had no idea about her mom and my dad. So, I told her the truth. I didn't hold back any details and then apologized for not telling her sooner because I genuinely didn't know how to bring it up, and I also didn't want to get involved. She seemed to understand but was in shock, which was expected. So I hung up and gave her time to process it all. I didn't know what else to do. Anyway, at least that's out of the way now. I told her, and now she can confront her mom. I feel a bit bad about the mess everyone is in now, but I think I've kept these secrets long enough. I don't need to do this anymore. I tried to stay out of it, but that got me nowhere. So now I'm just being honest and telling everyone what they need to know. If that turns out to be bad for them, that's not really my problem. I wasn't the one who had an affair or got involved with a married man. Update 3. A lot has happened in the last 2 weeks since I posted my last update. Apparently, my parents are now headed for a divorce. It took a while, but my mom finally decided to file for divorce and told my dad. She said she couldn't go on with this, that after finding out he had been unfaithful for 8 whole years, she couldn't pretend everything was fine and go back to living her life with him. My dad was pretty devastated, which is strange because, according to what his partner told me, he never loved my mom. He always felt trapped with her and only got married because she was pregnant with me. Maybe that was just a lie to get into my friend's mom's bed. But my cousin told me that on the day my mom finally told him she was going to file for divorce, my dad literally broke down crying. He begged her not to do it, promised her couples therapy, promised to let her check his phone to keep everything transparent, all that, and repeatedly asked her not to leave him. I don't understand how he could cheat on her for 8 whole years, create false expectations for another woman, and then expect my mom to stay. I always hated my mom, but right now, I think I hate my dad even more. Well, maybe I hate them both equally. What I do know for sure is that this family is a total mess, and it's not one I want to be part of. The only good thing that came out of what I did is that at least now my mom will leave my dad, something that should have happened a long time ago. My sister isn't speaking to him either, even though he's the one funding her business. But I don't think she's worried about that because I know my mom is going to demand alimony. Of course, my sister will just depend on my mom after that. That's the situation with my parents, and I'm sure they're blaming me for it. I don't know about my mom, but my dad has been ranting about how I ruined his family, how I've been ruining his life since before I was even born. My aunt has tried to calm him down, but he keeps ranting and spewing hate toward me, as if all of this is my fault. My cousin told me he's been acting crazy, and my aunt is considering kicking him out because she can't have this kind of negativity in the house. It's becoming really difficult to deal with him, so she might ask him to leave soon. Then he'll be in a tough spot because obviously he can't go back home since my mom is staying there. As for my dad's partner, I spoke to my friend, and thankfully, she's not too upset with me. At first, she was a little mad because I didn't tell her as soon as I found out since we're good friends. But then I explained that I really didn't think it would be appropriate coming from me, and also, I didn't want to get involved. After a lot of convincing and apologizing, she said it was okay and that she was glad I finally came to my senses and told her what she needed to know. Recently, she told me she had confronted her mom about it. Obviously, her mom was very distressed because she knew whatever she had with my dad was over now. After the incident at the anniversary party, my dad hadn't spoken to her at all and had blocked her everywhere after a few days. She couldn't find any way to contact him, so she didn't even try. After that incident, she realized he had been lying to her and had no intention of leaving his wife and family to start over with her. My friend told me her mom was very upset with herself. She tried to confront her and get mad at her, but her mom has been so miserable lately that she couldn't even do it. Instead, she ended up comforting her. She's learned her lesson now, and she's learned it the hard way. But that's what happens when you get involved with married men. I don't feel too bad for her, and neither does my friend, but she's looking after her mom because she's worried she might end up doing something stupid. She thanks me because otherwise she wouldn't have found out anything. She had no intention of telling her daughter, as she didn't want her to think badly of her. But after all, we're all human, and we all make mistakes. Some mistakes are simply bigger than others. I think our parents' mistakes are far, far bigger than we ever expected, so all of this is probably harder to handle. I'm glad I'm not in contact with my parents because I really don't want to have anything to do with them ever again. But I do hope things work out for my friend and her mom because, unlike my parents, at least she is close to her mom. I know she feels betrayed right now, as she should, but I hope they can work things out. That's all for now. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. My cousin told me a couple of weeks ago that just a few days after my last update, her mom finally asked my dad to leave. Apparently, he had been losing his temper over the smallest things, yelling at everyone, and that kind of behavior wasn't going to be tolerated in their house. She offered to let him stay a few more days until he found a place, but my dad is quite proud. The moment they confronted him about his unreasonable behavior, he stormed out angrily, without even thanking his sister for letting him stay with them. He didn't say anything to the family, even though they had been very supportive of him throughout this whole time. After that, since he moved out, my cousin wasn't able to tell me what was going on because, obviously, they didn't have contact with him for a while. But then, a few days ago, he came back crying and practically begged my aunt to let him return. Although he had found a place, he simply couldn't stay alone in that apartment because he was too miserable. He told her he was afraid of falling into a depression he wouldn't be able to get out of. He promised to be better and said he wouldn't behave erratically anymore. My aunt gave in, so now, since he's living with them again, my cousin told me he's in the process of divorcing. At the moment, it seems like it's going to be quite messy because he doesn't agree with the terms of the petition. There will probably be a lot of negotiations before they can come to a mutual agreement. And we all know how these things usually end. It definitely won't be pretty. It could also drag on for a long time. It's uncertain how he'll handle the situation because, from what I know, my mom has asked for an exorbitant amount of spousal support and my dad isn't okay with that. So, they're going into mediation with their lawyers and we have no idea how it will turn out. I don't think my mom will back down, and honestly, I'm very interested in the kind of gossip I'll get out of this. Update 5. It's been a few months since my last update, and I recently found out from my cousin that my parents' divorce has finally been finalized. In short, my dad fought hard and managed to reduce the alimony to a normal amount, but even that is still quite high for him. However, I'm not sure if it will be enough for my mom and sister because it's not the kind of income they're used to. My sister might have to get a real job now, as I don't think my mom can sustain their lifestyle and support her business with that amount of money. But honestly, I'm pretty satisfied with how the situation turned out because, well, no one is happy now. I wanted to teach them a lesson, and I think I did. So, I have no regrets about any of this. I'm very happy. Update 6. Now that I have the full scoop, I can give you all a proper update. I'll tell you about my father, my sister, my mother, and even my father's mistress. It's been a big effort to gather all this information for you, but with all the positive comments you've left lately, you've encouraged me to bring you more and more gossip. I'll start with my sister, who has had the most personal growth. She got a job and everything because now she doesn't have the money to keep running a business that brought more losses than joy. Without my father's support, he either didn't want to or couldn't continue funding her. And without my mother, who said she wasn't going to use the money she gets from my dad to waste it, my sister had to shut down her business for good. A business that was more closed than open is now entirely shut. About my mother, I've already mentioned some things, like how she tried to take all my father's money. Her selfishness is so great that even her golden child isn't worth parting with it. But to tell you something new, she had to find a more affordable place to live because the house my parents rented was too expensive to maintain. Between the gardening and cleaning expenses, which my mother wasn't willing to do herself, and the fact that she couldn't afford it without my dad's money, she decided to move. My sister also moved out because she didn't take it well that her mother wouldn't pamper her with the money she deserved. My dad, on the other hand, tried to go back to my friend's mom after the divorce was finalized. However, my friend's mom didn't take him back. My dad was apparently looking for a place to stay, though he didn't say that to his mistress. According to him, he wanted to wait until the divorce was over so they could enjoy their love. It's a real shame that someone, I don't know who, told the mistress's daughter that my dad also wanted forgiveness from my mom. I think that blew up any chances he had. Now he's back living alone because my aunt couldn't keep giving him shelter indefinitely. It must not be pretty having a middle-aged man crying because the two women in his life have left him. According to my cousin, that was my dad's behavior. So that's everything that's been happening with the people involved in the story of my post.